you could say like what you want your kids and your grandkids to know you for or remember you by, at the end of the day, what do you want them to remember you for? What do you want have your influence to have left a mark on? What's up, incredible and loved and valued people. I am so grateful. I always am to have the joy of you being on the Have You Heard podcast. My name is MMA McDaniel, and y'all are in for a very special treat today because we are having the one and only Mary Kate Robertson on the podcast, and we're going to be talking all things about being a wife, being a mom, walking with the Lord, talking with the Lord, and how our walk with the Lord is in every season. And I think we're going to learn a lot from Mary Kate, as I have for a long time, and so I'm really excited. So friends, faith comes by hearing. Grab your headphones and let's get into the Word. Mary Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Emma, thank you so much for having me. I truly am really honored to be on.
Oh, I feel like you probably have been told this just because it's so evident about you, but you have such a calming presence. Like just even before we started recording, the moment that you started speaking, it's just this, like let's just take a deep breath and enjoy time with a friend. So I'm really happy that you're on. And something that I love to ask people often is, what made you smile today? So I would love to know, what is something that made you smile today?
I think my kids lately, John Shepherd, who's 3, and Ella is 1. John Shepherd loves to run upstairs and get Ella out of bed. Like, he can't wait for her to get up. And I think it was, he beat me up the stairs today. And so when I walked into her room, he had already climbed into her bed with her. And they're both just like so happy to see each other. And then look at me come in the room. And it was just really, really sweet. Definitely made me smile.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. I love John Shepherd and Ella they are so cute, and they look like they're just two peas in a pod. They look like they genuinely enjoy each other's company, which is so sweet.
They really do. They do.
Yeah.
Most of the time, at least.
Oh, that makes sense with any siblings.
Yeah.
But I think something that's like really just plain to see is that you have a lot of different roles, just being a mom and being a wife and being a friend and a sister. And also you have been entrusted by the Lord with an incredible sphere of influence where you're pouring into many people. And I just wonder, like, in navigating all of those roles on a day-to-day basis, how have you prioritized like getting alone with God and being in solitude with Him? Because I really think that we have people listening to this podcast who are in tons of different seasons of life, but I feel like that's a common question of like, it feels like life is so busy. Like, how do I find the time to prioritize the most important thing in my life whenever I may not have as much time, and it doesn't feel like I have as much time as I did in the last season I was in?
Yeah. I remember I really struggled with that when I first had John Shepherd, because I was the type of person who I used to like love to wake up early and get into my Bible and journal, and would do it for, at least 30 minutes, if not an hour, but could just kind of enjoy my time, because I had John Shepherd like the year I got out of college. So when I was in college, I didn't have, like, my classes weren't too early. I didn't have to be up super early, so I could just kind of leisurely get up, have my Bible, journal. And I remember when we had John Shepherd, it was just like, whoa, you need me 24/7. And you're an infant. You have needs, and you're not necessarily, going to let me sit here and like read. And I really struggled with that at first. And I feel like it finally, I just got to this point of like realizing, okay, I think a lot of the times I just kind of dealt with almost some guilt of like, I'm not doing as much as I should. Like, I'm not reading as much as I used to. And it was almost like I felt guilty about it, in a sense of like I wasn't doing like what God like wanted me to do. But it finally, somewhere along the way, hit me of like, I'm not doing this because like I have to. Like, God's not disappointed in me. This actually really helps me. And I think it was as the longer I was a mom and then having another one, you just get stretched and stretched and stretched where you really can't just push through on your own strength anymore.
Yeah.
And I just came to a point of realizing, like, man, when I wake up before my kids and I spend time in the Word and I get a little quiet, it is just super encouraging for the rest of the day. And just meeting with God in the beginning of the day, it just does something to your spirit that like nothing else can.
Yeah.
And nothing else can like get me ready for a day with my kids more than that.
That's so encouraging because I love what you said too, just your honesty and feeling this guilt of like that God may have been disappointed in you because I know I felt that way. And I think it's like this pressure that we put on ourselves
Mm-hmm.
of almost this unset expectation that like you are thriving in your walk with the Lord if you wake up at this time in the day and your time with him looks like it looks exactly like this and you read this much and you journal this much. And I think whenever we enter into different seasons where we do have little ones and our routine day to day does look different, I think that like unsaid expectation kind of gets exposed and God's
Yeah.
like, hey, I never put that on you. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
jealous for you and I just want time with you. But you have put pressures on yourself that's actually
Mm-hmm.
robbing your joy of spending time with me. So I love that you shared that because I don't think you're alone in having felt that at all.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you said that. And I love how you said about how it becomes exposed because it wasn't anything that I even, realized I was necessarily putting on myself. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, it's God exposes it. Yeah, I love that.
I love how you talked about like just navigating through your day and just in being a mom, how you get stretched and stretched, and there comes a point where you can't just push through it. Like, have you noticed your dependency upon the Lord and your awareness of how much you really need Him and your appreciation for how He really does carry you? Have you seen that grow through being a mom? And how have you seen that?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I was actually thinking about that. I was going over some of the kind of questions you had sent me earlier,
Oh,
and you had like dating, marriage, and then first baby, second baby. And I was looking at them, and to me, dating feels like forever ago. I can hardly even, and we dated for such a short time, I can barely even remember that season. But looking back, I realized like a pattern in that of like every stage is just refines you more and more. Like, I feel like even when you just start dating someone, like, no, you're not married yet, but there is some level of commitment to dating. And then you get married, there's definitely commitment there where you're just having to think about another person. And then you throw in, like, your first baby, and they just, even more so than like marriage, that's someone who literally needs you 24/7. And then, like, that's
yeah.
very refining. And I feel like every season I was looking, I was like, God just kind of bumps up the refinement like a little more and a little more. And I just feel like for me, it finally, I didn't even realize how much I was just, I feel like depending on myself and not welcoming God in as much as I could have until I finally feel like I got to this place of like, I literally cannot do this every day, and I just
Yeah.
need the Spirit of God within me. I mean, yes, I can trudge along and like do task to task, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna, have the fruits of the Spirit coming out of me and sustaining me, if I'm trying to do
Yeah.
it on my own rather than welcome God into the picture. And even going back to like your previous question a little bit, like I did have kids, especially during like the newborn days, it really is like hard to wake up before a newborn. And I don't necessarily suggest it. Like sometimes you just got to get your sleep in when you can and then, get your Bible reading in, your journaling, your praying in later. But then also it's not just limited to that time of the day. I feel like when I'm with my kids or walking, going on a walk with my kids or anywhere else, just like inviting God into it, praying in those moments, and just acknowledging him as well are ways that I feel like he comes in and then just can fill me up and encourage me.
Oh, I love that so much because that's so true. We are walking with God. And it's
Hmm.
not like we're only with God whenever we're sitting down at a certain point in the day, opening up His Word. Like we're with Him all day long. When would you say that kind of shifted for you, where you realized that, like, wait, like I'm walking with the Lord all throughout my day. I'm talking with him all throughout the day, whether I'm sitting with him in his word or I'm rocking my baby to sleep or we're on a walk, like, or I'm
Yeah.
cooking supper. Like, it's all throughout my day, all throughout my life that it's a relationship with the Lord. Was there like a certain point or something that helped you grasp that that was the reality?
Yeah, yeah, I really think it was last year after we had, was that last year? I guess now 2 years ago. After we had the year we had Ella, 2021, we just had a ton of like stressors come up in our life. Not to say Ella was a stressor, but kind of, just adding in another family member who has needs. Um, we had her, and then just we were building our house, still building our house, and multiple other things happening behind the scenes. But I ended up going to counseling just to get some encouragement during this time and help me to
Yeah.
navigate it. And I feel like it was with my counselor. She just really, I feel like, taught me how to hear God's voice, unlike how I had known before. I feel like I had had nudges from God before, totally, but I feel like she just helped me learn, like, even how to pray and like things to ask him that to me just seems so maybe minute or I think in my life too I had some like what I felt were unanswered prayers that kind of left me wondering why really why pray. Like, I know as a Christian I'm
Yeah.
supposed to, but I feel like sometimes when you have big unanswered, what you feel are unanswered prayers are not answered how you know would like for them to be, it can leave you kind of asking, like, well, why even pray? And I feel
Yeah.
like God just really showed me ways that even if He's not answering it how I think He should, He's constantly caring for me
Mm.
and loving me. And I feel like I just saw that during that time of my life when I was just in a really difficult place and feeling really stretched. I just saw him come in and answer prayers in ways I never would have thought he would have. And seeing those prayers answered just gave me more and more reason to trust him and realize, like, you really love me. You really care for me.
Yeah.
And I just feel like feeling loved and cared for by your creator, it makes you feel a way that nothing else can, and just gives
Yeah.
you this hope and confidence and joy, and realizing, like, the more interactions like I have with God, the more I'm experienced that just like hope and joy and confidence and peace. So really a lot of it was like last in the last 2 years.
Wow. And I think that is so interesting how, like, this isn't in every case, but I can look back on like certain difficult parts of my life and see how I grew so much in my walk with the
Mhm.
Lord through it. Like, I remember whenever me and my family we moved from Alabama to Arkansas, it makes me think of that song, the Alabama, Arkansas.
Yeah.
That's literally where we moved to and from.
Yeah.
And I was in the middle of high school, and it was such a difficult transition for me, just leaving friends, stepping into a new community, not knowing anyone, and I felt so lonely. But there was such a shift of growing deeper in my relationship with the Lord, because I could have let the loneliness and the fear and potentially bitterness take root of not being where I would have thought I had been, and that would have changed the trajectory of how I would see that season. But I chose to trust in the Lord, and I chose to look to him, and I chose to trust that he really did love me and that he had a plan for us being there. And I like I be of course change is always difficult, but like had a deepened love for change. I had a deepened
Yeah.
love for being brought out of my comfort zone because I
Yeah.
knew that there was purpose in it. And so it's just
Mhm.
really sweet, and I think I really hope that, like, if there's somebody listening here who's like going through a difficult time, that they're encouraged to trust in the God who is the source of hope, because he really does give joy and peace. And you'll look back on, like what you're saying, like the one of the hardest seasons, but you're like, I learned even more about how much my God cares for me and about
Yeah.
how much my God loves me, which is so like him to bring his glory through such difficult times. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's really real and really encouraging. And also, I feel like this is kind of tied to something that I heard you say this. I think you posted about it like a couple years ago, but it has been something, you know, those things that you just have stick with you and you always remember. And like, I'm not even a mom yet, but I like will remember this and apply this to motherhood whenever I enter that season because I heard you say it. Like, you talked about the power of prayer in raising your kids just in every day. And do you know what I'm talking about? That quote that you heard about prayer with your kids and asking the Lord to help you in what it is that they need in the day. It
Yeah,
was,
yeah, I do remember talking. I don't remember the quote exactly, but just knowing like that was my counselor, the one I was just talking about. I had asked her for like, what parenting books would you recommend? And she's like, well, I can give you some books, and she did. But she said, you're gonna wonder, moment to moment, what to do with them. Like every situation, sometimes it's different. You're like, oh, I could do, multiple things right here. How should I respond? She said, there is someone who knows what you should do every single time, and it's the Lord, so just ask him.
yeah, that it's such a simple thing, but
Yeah.
I have like clung to that. And
Me
I think
too.
that sometimes the most simple things are the most profound. I had a similar moment when I was reading the word recently. I was reading about, um, oh, I always get Rachel and Rebecca confused. I think it was Rebecca. Yeah, it was Rebecca. Whenever she was pregnant with um, Jacob and Esau,
Mhm.
and the she has the twins and they are wrestling within her womb, and she's confused about like what's going on inside of her. And literally, like, the verse after she's made aware of them wrestling in her womb, it says that she goes and she asks the Lord about it. And the
Mm,
Lord responds to her and tells her, like, this is why they're wrestling in your womb. And that was all incredible. But what stuck out to me was this simple verse that, so she asked God about it. And that
mm,
has changed. Like, I read that about 5 months ago. And I would honestly say, like, the last 5 months, my relationship with the Lord has grown so much. So I can just
wow.
testify to what you're saying of, like, just driving in your car, cooking a meal. Like, I feel like sometimes we make it a little bit more complicated than it really is. Like, you really
Yeah.
can just ask him and talk with him about everyday things in your
Mhm.
everyday life. And I think
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
just
I
so
love that.
cool.
I'm gonna remember that verse now. I love
Yeah.
that so
It's
much.
one of my favorites now.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
It's so good. And I think it's really cool. I feel like there's this theme, which leads to my next question, but I feel like there's this theme like throughout this conversation regarding just being a wife and being a mom and just walking with the Lord and prioritizing solitude with Him. Um, the difference between depending on yourself and depending on the Lord. And I feel like depending on yourself can very easily lead to this striving and perfection type of mentality, which I mean, I'm not a mom, but I can see this easily leading into mom guilt. Just because when you are depending on yourself and you are expecting perfection from yourself, you can probably easily feel guilty about a lot of things because we're imperfect people, no matter how hard we try. And so I just think it's really cool because you've been talking about like the importance of depending on the Lord, and I could easily see that stripping away that mom guilt burden. But I would love to just ask you, have you experienced that mom guilt, and what encouragement would you have to the mom listening who's feeling that way?
I feel like I was thinking about that because that was a question you had sent earlier, and I do feel like I've experienced that, but maybe in kind of a different capacity. I feel like in the way that you're asking, I feel like God really has given me the grace of just being like, I'm doing the best I can,
Mm-hmm.
and He's going to fill in the gaps, and that's literally all I can do, And I feel like
Yeah.
comparing like from mom to mom, everyone is just so different. Like our situations are so different. Um, like our kids are different. Our just our jobs are different. Just so many different factors that it's just not even like fair to compare yourself to anyone else because it's just
That's
everything's
so
so
true.
different behind it. You just have to do the best with what you've got. There's some verse, and that was this is one of those things that I've remembered and just really hung on to. Lisa Turkhurst wrote about it on something, but it was a verse and put in different words. It said like we just have to do the best with what we've been given from the Lord,
Mm.
and that's just
Yeah.
all we can do. But I feel like I've had some guilt in the sense of, I feel like one way that, maybe this was one way that kind of the enemy was trying to like target me nearly 2 years ago, was just really questioning. I want to be home with my kids. I've always said that. I've always said I wanted to be home, but I was really questioning, like, is that enough? Like, should I
Mm.
be doing more than that? Because, like, I do have a sphere of influence, and I was just kind of struggling with, should I be doing more? Because I don't always feel like either that, being home with your kids is a very celebrated thing in our
Mm.
culture and in our world. It's a lot of the
Yeah.
times people say, this unsaid or unsaid thing of, a woman's talents or gifts or whatever. She could be out doing something. Why would she be home with her kids? And I feel like I struggled with that for a little while of wondering, like, is this enough? Is this worthy enough calling of being home with my kids? And I feel like that was one thing that the Lord has just come in and erased any like shadow of a doubt of, yes,
Wow.
be home with your kids. It is like, I feel like it's the worthiest thing I could be doing with my time right now, and I love it. And
Hmm.
I still am on Instagram a bit, doing things on there, but like truly a goal of mine on Instagram is to convey. It's awesome if you can like, and I'm very grateful to be able to be home with my kids as well.
Yeah.
I know that not everyone has that chance, but I do feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm called to, and it's more than enough to love my kids. And that's one thing that like I've hoped to kind of convey on Instagram is being a mom is awesome, and it is such a noble calling, worthy calling of just these children are just little souls, and we just have the opportunity to just help them and lead them to the Lord. And I don't know, I just really thankful for the opportunity to do it.
That's incredible, Mary Kate. And you portray that so beautifully. Like everything you're hoping to communicate, you are. And it made me, whenever you were talking about that and talking about influencing, it made me think of something that one of my pastors once said. He was talking directly to parents, and he said, parents, you are some of the chief influencers in your children's life. And I thought that was just so encouraging, because it can sometimes seem like folding the laundry and cleaning down like the trays after meals have been had, and picking up toys, and just going about the beautiful but sometimes can feel mundane
Yeah.
everyday things. It can sometimes feel like, okay, how much like weight does this actually hold? And just to be encouraged in the fact that no, this is of great importance. This is very influential. This is like honoring the Lord with what he's entrusted to me, doing the best with what he's given to me. Like God has given you your kids. And so I just love that you said that. And speaking of like being a chief influencer, like just impacting your children in a way that's just full of purpose. I loved this question. I was talking with my mom about this conversation with you because I was so excited to have this conversation. And she brought up a question that I was like, oh, I gotta ask her that. Because I was like, I feel like that just puts you in a really cool headspace. But if you could say like what you want your kids and your grandkids to know you for or remember you by, like at the end of the day, what do you want them to remember you for? What do you
Yeah.
want have your influence to have left a mark on?
I think just overall for them to have said that, like, I love the Lord and desired for them to know the Lord's love for them. And I
Hmm.
think that is something that I pray for them every night, is that they would know him, they'd know him early, and they would just walk and talk with him all the days of their lives. And I just hope that in our day-to-day life, that's something that like I'm not missing, and just always
Yeah.
coming back to like that's the ultimate goal. Like we made Play-Doh this morning. I'm looking at all their toys around me right now that I need to clean up. But
Oh.
knowing like, we can do all the fun things. We can do the Pinterest crafts, or they can wear cute clothes or whatever, but nothing matters as much as how I'm portraying the Lord, to them in their
Yeah.
lives, and them seeing my walk with him and in our family and how we pray. And I just hope that that's the biggest takeaway for them. was
That
that I loved the
encompasses
Lord and
everything.
wanted them to know the Lord's love for them.
That's incredible. I feel like this episode is just filled with so much wisdom and so much encouragement. I'm so grateful. I have one more question that I would love to ask you, because I think our listeners kind of cover a broad age group, but a lot of them are in that like transitioning into college or transitioning out of college. And so, if you were to go back to your college age self, what advice would you give to yourself?
One thing that I feel like John Luke and I did, and I actually feel like we did it fairly well, but I wish we could have just done it even more so. But we were married in college, and I always have kind of recommended this to married people, but really to anyone, it's just do the things like with your friends, like that community that we were with, godly community, and that's for us. We were at Liberty, and we just had just such an incredible friend group. I just feel like that's such a like formative time going into
Yeah.
college, and like those people that you're around are going to shape so much of how you come out of college. And I just look back and I'm super grateful for the influences we had in our life. And I look and I see we're all, I guess like 4-ish, 5-ish years out of college right now, me and my friends. And so much, I just look around, there's just so many tough things that friends have gone through. And I'm just grateful that we had each other. And I look back
Yeah.
and I'm so grateful for things that they like encouraged me in and built me up in, really just in my relationship towards the Lord. But I just know for me and John Luke, we really appreciated our friends in college and just how we were encouraged and loved by them, and how even that kind of helped push us all out into
Yeah.
the world.
I love that because I feel like sometimes in entering college, exiting college, just that whole season, it can sometimes be, again, overcomplicated, making friends, and it can sometimes be a tough thing. And so I love that simple encouragement of godly community changes your life, and there's
Yeah.
something so powerful about just an invitation or an ask or a hey, how are you doing? Mary Kate, I am
Mm.
so grateful for you, and I really believe that there's just a lot of encouragement that will be shared with a lot of people through this episode. And I just want to thank you for being on the Have You Heard podcast today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Emma. I
Yeah.
really am honored. I know I already said it, but I really am. And
Oh.
I'm leaving really encouraged right now, getting
Oh.
to spend some time with you.
Good. Well, me too. And everybody who's listening, I love you so much. Mary Kate loves you so much. And I hope that your week is just phenomenal. I hope you know how loved you are. And just, I encourage you, talk with the Lord throughout your day because He's with you all day long. I love you guys. Bye.